Hi guys, and welcome to episode 3 of the JLX Friends with Benefits podcast with me, your host, Xander Connerbeer. Today I'm joined again by Jack Lenton, and we have a very special guest in Talia Bentley. Talia has come on today to talk about her past with disordered eating and accepting living with type 1 diabetes as well. Today is an absolutely fantastic episode, and we really hope you enjoy the show. Let's get into it.
Okay, so Talia, thank you for spending your sunny Friday afternoon with us and coming on board.
Thank you for having me.
We normally kick off the podcasts with something that we're excited about this week. Can be a work project, can be something entirely different, but whatever it is that is the first thing that springs to mind. Have you got anything that you are excited for right now?
Our project is what springs to mind. For sure. Yeah, I'm excited. Do I give stuff away?
Tell what you want to tell.
Okay, so for those who don't know, I've got type 1 diabetes, so a lot of my demographic on socials is to do with that, I guess, and fitness. So we have teamed up to create something which should hopefully benefit people in the way that I think is most suited to diabetics, instead of kind of saying what works and what doesn't. It's something which will guide people in the right direction of kind of learning and understanding, so they can take that control, because type 1 it's not like one shoe fits all. Mm-hmm. So yeah,
that's it. Yeah, trying to be more educational and descriptive.
Exactly. Yeah, for sure. So
what about you, Xander? Anything that comes to mind?
I have been, actually, just before I go into that sounds really interesting. I'm glad you even told us about that, because I hadn't got all the details on it. So I was like, come on, please say.
Spilt the tea.
Exactly. So yeah, I've been working on some more client projects this week, trying to build on some things that we've discussed as well. And just trying to get that value out, really, trying to kind of improve and increase the amount of clients we can get, and obviously the quality that we can produce with that.
Yeah,
obviously
that.
The planning stages of that take, I think, the most time. It's all that back end work that people don't see, and I'm sure you guys will agree fully with that. It's the kind
100%.
It is.
I think that's why people don't often, like, they want to be an online coach, but they don't understand why it doesn't work for them, because they don't understand what goes into it.
Yeah, we actually spoke about this on the first podcast, about how the price tag that you put on things doesn't actually really relate whatsoever to the work that you do behind it.
Exactly. Yeah,
so,
for sure.
Yeah, hopefully that will be a good one, and the people will appreciate it, and it rolls out well. What about yourself, Jack? What have you been up to in your week?
This week is my final week of cycle training before doing my race.
Oh.
Race being, it would have been next week as an actual race, obviously due to the virus, it being cancelled. And I thought, well, fuck it, I can still do it. So I'm still going to do 46 miles, try and get a gold time, which is 2 hours 43. And yeah, I'm excited for it, because it's not been that long in training, really, I should say. I mean, I only started last month or so. And within about 2 sessions, I was like, fuck it, I should do a massive race.
Yes, winner's mindset. Love that. Love that.
So that's going to be happening, next week. And I want to see if I can get a good time. I've called myself out publicly here now, haven't I? Instead of the clients.
That's it. It's out there.
I'm going to have to report back on another one and say what my actual time was. We'll see how that goes.
We can put a little clip of it at the start of you getting over the finish line.
So
out.
Yeah. So to dive into some of the questions, I think one of the first things that me and Xander were really interested in, Talia, was with everything that's often spoke about with diabetes and with type 1 diabetes, it's a lot of kind of mitigating downsides, right? How can you make up for things so do you think that there's actually any benefit to having type 1, or has it benefited you in any way?
I mean, I used to get early lunches in high school, if that counts. Skip the queue. But yeah, no, 100%. I think that if I didn't experience type 1 from the age I did, like, it's molded me as a person completely. I think it's kind of you learn or grow through what you go through, as cliche as it is. But it's kind of given me a passion in life, and it's helped me kind of build a business which I never would have had if I didn't get type 1. I wouldn't have got into fitness. I probably wouldn't have even had an eating disorder, and that itself has shaped me as well as having the type 1. So I think there's definitely benefits to it. And I think if you can take something that is a chronic illness and flip it, it will just completely change your mindset. I think it's very easy to play the victim with something like that, but there's always something worse you can have, or something you can make of it, rather than making yourself feel shit all the time. Can I swear? Yeah. Okay.
No.
and I think that whether you take that and flip it or you don't, it's not going to change the fact that you have it.
Exactly.
And so people that spend their lives resenting it and fighting it, you're actually just doing yourself a world of bad, rather than actually something in it that you
100%. Yeah.
Do you think there are any direct physiological benefits at all to it? Something like, I mean, again, this is me completely kind of guessing, and you may say absolutely not, but I'm willing to look stupid in, favor of asking the question. With something like staying leaner, for example, do you feel that you're able to keep like a tighter body composition because you control your carbs and your insulin really, really tightly?
Yeah, I mean, there's a connotation that people either think it makes things easier or it makes it harder. So I think in terms of, you can't always control when your blood sugar goes low, and so if you're trying to maintain a calorie deficit, then, and you're having to wake up at 4 a.m. and have Lucozade and it's like a protein bar, you're obviously, it's kind of counterbalancing what you're doing in a way, but you can account for that. I always tell my girls to create a little section in MyFitnessPal for like hypocalories, so they can even put it into the next day, so that they can like work it around their week so that they can maintain within their goals. In terms of actually knowing about carbohydrates from such an early age, and it gives you kind of an insight to calories, yes, because you have to be knowledgeable. You go to the hospital like once a month to be taught about it, so you kind of get a head start in understanding energy balance, I guess. But that's if you are invested in it. Not everyone is. And there's the other side. If you don't inject your insulin, then there's actually an eating disorder called diabulimia. So obviously, if you don't give your insulin, you can't store fat, so your body is just literally losing weight. The more you eat, the more weight you lose, and that's a really slippery slope to get into.
Yeah,
there's different ways it can impact, for sure.
And also then knock-on effects in terms of things coming up from long-term problems with blood sugar management and
100%.
just poor blood sugar levels in general, I guess.
Yeah, I think a lot of the time people just need tough love, because when you're 15, 16, 17, which is like a common age to get diagnosed, you don't think about going through that. I think to have seen someone with the same story as me would have been a really kind of prominent or life-changing effect. So for me to be able to do that to one person would be like, I'd feel like my job was done. But yeah, I guess that was a big part of why I do what I do.
Yeah,
definitely.
Sure.
Yeah.
With that recovery phase, or multiple phases that make up the entire recovery, what did that timeline kind of look like for you in terms of the process of it, and maybe some ideas about actual chronological time within that as well, and how long each part lasted?
So when it started, I always take it back to the fact that when you've got type 1 at a young age, you feel very out of control of what you can do. I kind of had to live as like under my parents, but that's because they were so obviously like worried about having a child with a chronic illness. So like going to parties, going out with friends was always a really big deal.
Yeah.
And so I think I started to manage my food as a way of controlling something, anything, because I felt like nothing ever kind of went into it. I don't think anyone does, thinking, right, I'm going to eat nothing and become an anorexic, because I don't think anyone even realizes that it's slowly happening. So I started restricting my food in sixth form. I would eat nothing until 6 p.m. and then I would have between 300 and 500 calories. And that would be it. And in my head, that was fine, because I was like, as soon as I get to my goal weight, I'm going to stop and it'll be fine. And I just want to get there quickly, because I have that mentality that when I do something, I'm going to get it done. So that went on for a while, and I danced, and I think my dance school kind of started to notice that I was losing weight, and everyone was like, wow, you look amazing. Like, and that in itself can be like, okay, let's keep going, because everyone's saying I look good, like I want to keep going and look even better. And at this point, I'd kind of adapted a mentality that food was bad and I didn't want to eat, and I wanted to get to this like amazing skinny figure. And so that kept going, to the point where eventually my parents said, like, okay, this is fine, like you need to eat now, like you need to be sensible, you need to fuel your body for dancing. I was working 2 jobs at the time. I was in sixth form. I had like a week's worth of experience in a gym. Like everyone was saying, you're going to ruin what you want to do, like you're basically sabotaging yourself by doing this. And you just think the whole world is against you. You think people are just lying, like you can't really see it from anyone's point of view. And I guess when you're literally, every time I saw a mirror, every time I was by myself, I would stand and analyze every single part of my body. I've got like hyper extending knees, so when I stand still, my knees don't touch, but I would like push my knees together just to make sure that they weren't touching at the top. And it was such an obsession that it like consumed everything I did. I wouldn't see friends. It got to the point where I wasn't speaking to family. People were worried, but I was just angry that people were trying to tell me that it was a bad thing because it's what I wanted. And so my parents started cooking for me and saying that like I had to eat. And that's when it got to the point where I hate saying it, but I would put food down the toilet. I would hide it at the bottom of the bin. I would feed it to the dog. I'd put it in the garden. I used to put it in my pockets, and I'd always walk the dog after my dinner, and I would like just leave it like on my walk in different places. And even at this point, like I didn't have a problem. I just had a goal, and I didn't see myself as kind of deteriorating in the way I was. And I think it was around this stage when I'd started to kind of resent everyone, that my sixth form tutor called my mum and was like, Talia is developing a serious problem. My dance teacher at school had said that it was not normal, the amount of weight I'd lost in such a short space of time. And then my mum kind of sat me down and she was like, this is something we need to address properly. Like, you need to listen to what we're saying and understand what you're doing to your body. And at this point, I'd started going for weigh-ins at the hospital once every 2 weeks. And I used to fill my pockets and coats with stones. I used to wear ankle weights under my joggers, just to kind of appease the fact that people was telling me I needed to gain weight. And I used to know exactly how much I had put in my body. I used to know exactly how much weight I'd lost because they'd tell me how much weight I'd gained from the amount of kilograms that I'd kind of added to myself.
You become a bit of a master manipulator almost.
Yeah.
Trying to really coax things to go the way that you want them to go.
Yeah, 100%.
Control, but turns into control to the max.
Exactly. Yeah.
Was there a real moment of relinquishing that control and thinking, actually, I need to accept help from family?
Yeah. hit rock bottom. I think at this point I'd weighed just under 6 stone. And I don't have any photos of the like severity of what it was now, because I had to get rid of them through my recovery to like help me move forwards. But you could see like every like hairline, bone in my body, like my back was just, nothing was there. It was kind of, that was a revealing moment, I'd say, because at that point I started to look at those pictures in a different light. Whereas before I would be on pro anorexia websites, like thinking about how much more weight I wanted to lose and how fat I was, and sorry to use that word, but that's how I felt at the time. And how kind of like worthless I was if I had this body fat on me. And then I kind of began to see like, this isn't healthy. It's not what I want. I kind of want more for my life than this. I deserve more, and like, I don't want to ruin the best years by being consumed by something that initially was meant to be something that I could control, and now it was so out of my control that it was literally killing me. People were saying every day, like, you are slowly killing yourself by doing this. So yeah, I guess that was kind of a big realization point for me.
And then what was the climb out of that like, in terms of you going through the process of adding weight?
Yeah, so at this point I'd admitted defeat, but my head wasn't in it. Like, I wasn't 100% there. I was kind of saying it half-heartedly, meaning it, but more so wanting to just tell my parents and my family and my friends what they wanted to hear. So at this point I was still tracking calories. My parents didn't know, my therapist didn't know, but I would still track everything I was eating. I'd still be exercising. So I was working like split shifts as a waitress, like 12-hour shifts. In between I would run 2 miles to the gym, run at the gym on the treadmill, and then run back to work and do another like 6-hour shift in the evening. And then I wouldn't eat anything after that. This was all still going on when I was recovering. And I'd eat a little bit more, but it would be 50 calories a day, or it'd be kind of me thinking, okay, well, I've got butter on my toast, so that's enough. Like, kind of little things that I'd grown a fear of. My fear foods was like oily, buttery things. And I'd kind of have them day to day, but I knew myself it wasn't right, but it was kind of appeasing everyone else who was seeing me eat those things. And I'd put a fair amount of weight back on, because when you're so malnourished, it's very easy, as you know, to gain weight when you start to eat more. And then we went on a family holiday, and it was a all-inclusive like breakfast type thing. So you'd go and have your breakfast in the morning, and they'd eat everything like you can imagine. Breakfast food was there, and that caused a relapse for me, because I was so anxious all the time. I was literally having panic attacks before going down for breakfast, because there was just food everywhere, and my parents were eating loads, and everyone was like, come on, like, have a croissant. And I was like, inside, like, my head was just everywhere. And so that caused me to kind of go back into a place that I knew I was comfortable in. And I started restricting again and being manipulative with my food and what I was eating. And it was my dad that said, like, you're not okay again, are you? And that's when I really, like, it was very heartfelt, in the sense that I finally opened up and I said, like, I'm not okay. I've never been okay for years, but I've not been able to actually speak to anyone about it, not even like a therapist. I didn't really ever fully open up. So that was kind of a big moment, and just letting everything go. I cried, I ate, I didn't exercise, I didn't track calories. There's a stage in my life that I wish I had photos, but I don't, because it wasn't right for me then to take them, that I had to get to an uncomfortable position to be able to regain my menstrual cycle. I didn't look like I do now because I had to get a lot of body fat from my body to be able to function normally again. And I had to get to a headspace where I was fine with kind of surrounding myself in an environment like a gym, where there's a lot of talk of weight loss and how you look physique wise and stuff.
How long do you think that regain period was, where you went from getting to that, or going from the relapse into even the potentially uncomfortable weight?
I'd say that was probably about a year and a half.
Right.
Of kind of not, I'd wear baggy clothes all the time. I didn't really want anyone to see me, but that's what worked for me. And yeah, it was a stage where even before I developed an eating disorder, I was always like, and I've got a naturally slim build. So it was way beyond what I looked like before, which was a very scary and daunting thing at the time. But my head was in a place where I knew that's what I needed to do to kind of let myself live a happy life. I went through extreme hunger for quite some time. I'd wake up in the middle of the night and consume 3,000, 4,000 calories.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's a combination, obviously, of having the kind of moral and family support there, and the importance of having people around you that you can really be open and honest with.
Yeah,
but I think it's
definitely.
also really important there to underscore the fact that it did take a lot of time, a year to a year and a half, and B, it also takes, as you say, sometimes getting to that uncomfortable stage if you want to properly reset hormones, etc. Because
exactly.
we live in a world at the moment of before and afters, of transformation pictures, and of even ones in some cases that aren't honest. And what is often left out is in between type stages, I think, about how, whether it's a guy who wants to build a lot of muscle mass, there's probably going to be a stage where you have a lot of body fat with that. Or if it's someone in recovery, as you say, you may have to get to a stage where you add, you don't get to what your ultimate goal would look like or what you think it would want to be, but then you kind of refine from there once you're in a happy, healthy place.
Exactly, yeah.
And I'll say to clients who have been through, recovery, I don't work directly with anyone who's in the grips of an eating disorder at the time, because I say respectfully, that's not my area of expertise, and I tell them where to go and get that. But if someone's just come out of that and they truly are, after our conversations, in a good place to be able to do that, then the focus is always on health first, and explaining that, look, you need to get healthy, because then that's when your body can roll. Like, if you really want to be building muscle mass and gaining strength in the gym and looking how you want to look, that can only come from a healthy foundation.
100%.
And otherwise you're always going to be stuck in an unhealthy world.
It's gotten to a point, I think, where we idolize and glamorize something that isn't healthy for a female anymore. Like, these people that are filling our feeds and just kind of consuming every part of social media, I'd say 95% of them are not honest about how they treat their body or what they do to get to that stage. I mean, half of them will share a picture of them eating a donut, but probably don't show what they're eating for the rest of the day. And then everyone starts thinking, like, why can't I eat that and look like that? And it's this kind of weird connotation that the more you can eat, but the better you look, the kind of more worthy you are in the fitness industry. I think it's a very weird complex.
Right, yeah. Xander and I had a chat about this with carbs and everything on the podcast the other day, saying about how it's become a little bit of a dick waving contest of I can eat 500 grams of carbs a day and still have abs, so that's cool. But it's actually not, something that is realistic for a lot of people generally. So with that gaining phase for you, were there then complications or anything you had to consider with type 1 that interacted with that?
Yeah, for protein, when you're eating it at such a high level, and fat, it all shoots your blood sugar up, and that's very hard to manage, because it's hard to kind of get it right when you're used to eating X amount of carbs with a meal. You know you need to inject 20 minutes before, but when you have this like impulsive hunger that you feel like you need to eat food now, then it's kind of hard to inject the right amount of insulin to counteract the food that you're eating at the right level. So there was a lot of ups and downs in terms of blood sugar throughout that time. And kind of it did definitely short term affect my overall control of my levels, because there was no way really that I could have acted as a pancreas, because I didn't know how I was feeling from 1 minute to the next. So to be sat there, you don't kind of think, right, I'm gonna go and eat 3,000 calories now. It's just like this impulsive feeling that like comes from somewhere, and to kind of sit and calculate every carb that you're consuming is impossible, because you're just, it's like a weird, like animalistic, undescribable feeling.
I think our bodies are very good at knowing when we actually need more food.
Yeah.
And that is why we get completely normal natural hunger signals and regulation of hormones like leptin and ghrelin that really say like, hey, let's turn it up now, let's add some body fat. With that phase, of course, the way to do that well is to eat consistently enough food, a sufficient amount of food, not over exercise, etc. All the things that people kind of know intuitively, but I feel like still shrouded, this whole area is still shrouded in a lot of misconceptions around ways to gain weight. And people say, like, I remember when I was like 53 kilos or something when I started off, like skinny as they come, and people were telling me things like, oh, but don't eat too many carbs because then that'll add body fat. And I was like, right, mum, no roast potatoes for me, lay on the chicken. When really I needed pure calories, I needed more food, and I didn't understand nutrition enough at that time to be able to grasp that. So what are some of the misconceptions that you think you believed at the time that you would now debunk?
I mean, I think the whole connotation that carbs are the devil is something that was with me for a long time. I don't know what it is about them, and I don't know why the fitness industry have managed to thrive off telling people that carbs are bad. But I would say to anyone that has a fear of any food group, whether it be carbs, fat, protein, whatever it is that you've kind of managed to grow a fear of, is that you don't need to live in fear of any type of food, because it's such a luxury for anyone who's in a privileged position, like I'd say a lot of us are, that are probably listening to this, and you want to be able to enjoy every aspect of life, and food is a big part of that. It's so social. If you're going to meet your friends, it's usually for food or coffee, and so to kind of feel so anxious all the time about a certain food group, when you actually say it out loud, you can kind of rationalize with yourself, because whether you're going through binging or restricting, if you actually sit there and say, I'm not going to eat for 2 days, or I'm going to go and spend £100 in Asda and eat it all in one sitting, like, it kind of makes it feel as weird as it is. I'm not saying it's weird because I've been through it, but it kind of gives it a real depth or meaning, and it can kind of make you see it in a different light. So
if you're like, especially if you're in a situation where you feel like you can't perhaps speak to other people about it,
exactly,
just being able to voice it like out loud audibly to yourself, or whether you write it down, to actually just in plain English describe what it is that you're doing, rather than hiding it. Because as you say, like, I know that when I went through a binging stage, it was all fully justified in my head, because I could make up reasons this, and I wanted to be by myself, I didn't want to see people, and all that kind of thing.
Very isolating.
But actually, if like you say, you just say out loud, I'm about to go and spend 50 quid on Ben and Jerry's and probably take it down within a day and a
Yeah,
half, you're like, you can then take a step back and be like,
exactly.
actually,
Yeah,
I know this isn't a thing that should be done.
100%. Yeah, it does. It helps you kind of rationalize with yourself. I think one of the best things I did was get a voice recording app and speak to myself and listen back to it. Kind of helps you see things in a way that other people would probably see that conversation that you're having with yourself. Because with anorexia, I'd say I did kind of develop a voice in my head that would be telling me like to do it, like you don't need to eat, like you kind of talk to yourself in a very nasty way, and it sits on your shoulder, and it is a real thing, definitely, especially if you delve into the world of like pro-anorexia and bulimia websites. They are, I don't know how they're allowed to be so easily accessible.
Yeah, and I mean, it's absolutely true that you get what you surround yourself with. You are the average of what it is that you surround yourself with.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
the amazing thing about the access that we do have now is that you can completely turn yourself off to that sort of stuff.
yeah,
And you can be following people with different messages around
yeah,
food. And it's
definitely.
not just about following those messages, because look, at first you may not buy into it, you may not believe it, you may think that they're just as untrustworthy as everyone else, but actually
Yeah,
you'll start to see that there's an entire community built around that, and there's so many people who are
definitely.
thriving because of it, and they feel better.
Yeah,
And then you get to see that in real life play out, and how things go for people. And
yeah,
then when it comes to cutting out those types of pro anorexia, pro bulimia type sites and forums, I mean, we literally have technology now that you can block those from
yeah,
your browser, not be able
yeah,
to access them.
yeah,
Give a trusted friend or a family member the password to that app that's
yeah,
blocked it, and don't give yourself the option to access it and
100%.
surround yourself
Yeah,
with those messages. Use technology to your
definitely.
advantage, and build up that kind of circle of positive people around you as well, who are on a similar
Yeah,
path, because that's only going to encourage things.
definitely. Yeah, 100%. I think having someone that you can really talk to, but like really from inside of you be able to speak to that person, it helps a lot. And I think, like you say, being able to share with that person, like, can you please remove this from me? Because I didn't trust myself with a lot of things. Having scales, having things like the pro-anorexia websites, that was things that I couldn't have had in my kind of anywhere close to me being able to access it. If I was having a bad day, I would have logged in, or I would have weighed myself. And so it's really important to have that person that you can open up to.
Hi guys, just a quick one. I hope you're enjoying the show. If you or someone you know is struggling with an eating disorder, mental health, or you think that maybe you have diabetes or you're currently struggling with it, do seek medical or professional advice as a first point of call. Your health and well-being is the highest importance to us, so please take care of yourselves. I've put some links into the bio for some sources of information that I hope you find helpful. Do reach out if you have any questions or would like some further help. Enjoy the rest of the show. So just to take you back, Talia, to what we were talking about a moment ago, when you mentioned how you have those kind of voices and you record yourself to listen to it back, I find that really interesting, because when we have that, obviously there's a hypothesis that when we digest voices from the outside, they get taken in differently to the ones that we obviously have running through our inner ear, which is like how we think and do that. And it's much easier to process those things, because then it's a kind of discussion that goes on within your brain between those different areas. That's like, is this right?
Yeah.
Is this right? And I think, like you were kind of alluding to, you have that area that is the kind of bad area. And I'm saying, I always think of my left side as the side that wants to draw me into things I really shouldn't be doing. And I think that when you go through these situations, that voice is always there. Everyone has that voice, but it depends how loud that voice screams at you. And I'd like to kind of get your thoughts on this, but do you feel that, you still have that voice a little bit, but it's much quieter, and the kind of voice that's telling you to do good and all that great stuff is louder, or do you feel like it's gone?
I would say that there is 100% times that I go through when I'm feeling low or not necessarily my best self, that I have thoughts that aren't necessarily ones that you would associate with someone that doesn't have an eating disorder. But then I don't think everyone's honest about how they do feel sometimes. And I would say that even before I was diagnosed with anorexia, I didn't have an amazing relationship with food, but it was good. And I don't think that people often talk about the thoughts that they do have about themselves as honestly and openly as people could. I mean, when I was actually going through recovery and I eventually got my menstrual cycle back properly, I remember thinking in my head, like, no, like, I don't want it, because not having a period meant that I was skinny, and like those things were there still throughout, but I'd learned how to kind of rationalize with myself and know that that wasn't a normal way to think or behave. So yeah, I'd say it's not that I never have bad thoughts, it's just that I know how to cope with them. And I think that's the same for everyone, not just someone that's had an eating disorder.
Yeah.
I like what you said there about it being about persistence, essentially, regardless of feeling or, you know, hearing those thoughts, and very similar to the physical as well, like we were speaking about earlier, of being in those stages of, you know, maybe not even necessarily wanting to gain more, but knowing that you do persist and you do keep going, and that's how you get there.
Yeah, exactly.
I need to show some pictures for YouTube viewers. If you're not listening on YouTube, then get over there if you want to see
You're missing
Jack's
out.
in between because I didn't go through anorexia. I was extremely skinny to start, because I did a huge amount of sport and a huge amount of cardio exercise, and I didn't want to go in and eat dinner because I wanted to be out playing. So I would, you know, scoff down whatever minimal food I could and get right back out and exercise. But that was just from being an active kid. But when I started, I'm going to admit as well, you're going to laugh at this, but I was a year into lifting at this point of this picture, right? I had a year of lifting under my belt.
Nah, that doesn't even look like you. That doesn't even look like you.
That was me a year in, as I say, and I was it was low 50 kilos. I remember getting weighed for PE and being quite a bit lighter than a few of the girls in the room, and being rather like, I really need to get on the weights after having that experience. My heaviest though, I was about 100 pounds over that. I was 215. And like you say, that's just about persistence. And even though I wasn't happy with my level of, if I wanted to really build a good amount of muscle mass and change my physique long term, I had to go through that.
Definitely.
And so this was me at 215 roughly.
Wow, you've done a full circle.
So no sign of any abs, you know, stomach pushing out further than your chest and everything, you know, no sign of veins or
lean. Let me
lean.
after a bowl of pasta. Real talk.
And at that point,
that's insane.
That again was where I knew that I had to, if I wanted to get to the level of muscle mass that I wanted, and now that's probably one of the most recent ones that I've took in comparison to the others. But what's important is that was hanging around under that.
Yeah.
And I had to get to that in order to get to there.
Yeah, definitely.
Because had I never have gotten to that stage, I probably wouldn't have been able to stay that lean and build that level of muscle mass.
Yeah. You know, it's also like a mental thing.
Yeah, especially wanting to stay natural and not wanting to go down that route as well. Especially if you're going to go the slow and steady natural route, you have to go through good bulking and cutting cycles.
That's a whole new topic.
Yeah, that's another podcast.
A very interesting one. A very interesting one.
But I hope that shows, and maybe your journey looked somewhat similar.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's important to underscore to people, that it's also absolutely fine to go through that stage and to look like that. And when people, you mentioned something about identity as well, with getting your period back and feeling like, you know, but I identify almost as someone that doesn't have that, you know, it's a hard pull for me to not have that.
100%.
And I was the same in that scenario. I was, you know, I was pretty young there still, you know, kind of all things considered. and older guys in the gym knew you as like the big young kid, you know, like you've got a lot of mass on you. And I thought I was hot shit because I was big and because I was strong. And I look back on pictures like that and I'm like, but I didn't look how I wanted to look. So that's why I made those changes, you know, and that's why I'm a good, you know, 30 pounds lighter than that almost now, 25 pounds lighter or so. But in terms of identifying with that, I think it's also important to underscore that if you currently identify as someone who is, you know, smaller, and you currently identify a lot of you feel like a lot of your social ties are tied up in that, and you're worried about how people will judge you for when you look different. Looking different is a really cheap way, an easy way of finding out who your real friends were.
100%.
I mean, if someone ditches you as a friend, an accomplice, a family member, whatever, because your body now looks different to how it previously did, that was a real easy way to get rid of that person from your life.
100%. Yeah, I couldn't put that better. 100%.
To jump in on that one, the really interesting thing I find about identity, I went through something very different to both of you, but in terms of like athletics and performance. Obviously, I played a lot of rugby, and when I lost that, I felt like I lost everything because of it. I didn't think I belonged here anymore because that was who I was. I was a rugby player. And I can't remember who.
If I hop in there as well, you're downplaying that a little bit. I will upplay it for you and say that he was in England junior team.
Were you?
So he was hot
shit.
No, I actually prefer. I've got all sunburned, Jack. Thanks, mate.
That's really cool. That's really cool. You should tell people. You should put that in.
Yeah, it's something I do try. It's just very difficult. It's something I still try and work through these days. But the best thing someone ever told me about that was, don't hold your qualities in the things that you do. It should be held in the things that you are. So like I held my qualities as a rugby player, and I cannot remember for the life of me who said it, but they were saying that the qualities that you possess as a rugby player is what will carry you forward in life. It's the fact that you went out, wind, rain or shine. It's the fact that you trained every single day. It's the fact that you ate to do what you did. And I was a bit like you, Jack. Like I got told time and time again, if I wanted to play professional rugby, I had to eat more. And I still weighed like 75 kilos at the time, but you know, you get kicked around like a piece of popcorn in a professional game like that. And like the really interesting, that really pivoted it for me. And it's something I say to a lot of like my athletes now, or my clients, you know, if they get injured, remember the principles of what made you the person you were to get there. And those principles might be that you work down hard, you get up early, you do the shit that other people don't want to do. It's not that you are an athlete. It's not that you are a powerlifter or you've got a sweet physique. It's the fact that you did the shit that you needed to do to get that.
You know, someone can, you know, it's not necessarily just the fact of how someone looks or how they perform, but it's also, you know, that what it took them to get there.
100%.
Maybe
that's the stuff that matters.
You don't feel like you could get there yourself even sometimes.
Yeah.
Like I see like 18-year-old Formula One drivers winning races and stuff. You're like, yeah, that was never my thing. Like I couldn't have been Max Verstappen, but like you admire that because you know what he's put into it, you know, and you know what that involves. And so I think building your identity around being that person who does those things and executes them to the best of your ability, rather than the outcome, is the important thing, because the outcome's going to ensue from that anyway if you do those behaviors.
Exactly.
But the exact outcome isn't guaranteed regardless.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
You can't control exactly how it's going to look. And so you do, and you hear this all the time with, you know, people wanting to look a certain way, they get there, then they change it and they want to look another way. You hear it with money, you know, you can never have enough. Business
chasing rainbows.
And it's because you're valuing the outcome more than the process. I think the more process oriented you can get, the better. Like I know when I just 100%. Have a blasting day with all my habits, all my work, like training, and everything goes well, I lay in bed at night and I'm like, fucking right, that was a good day. You know, nothing externally's changed. My body doesn't look different from 7 o'clock in the morning, or you know, my bank account doesn't look different or anything, but you know that you've taken care of those things.
Definitely.
That's the stuff you need to have pride in, I think.
Absolutely.
It's funny you say that, actually. I got a question yesterday, and it said, someone said, does like having a good body matter to you? And that's kind of what I wanted to get at. It's not that it's important that you look a certain way, it's the attributes that you have, like the determination or the drive or like the integrity that you hold, that kind of gets you to a certain place or a level, which I think is kind of what we were getting at. It's everything that makes you that's important. Like someone doesn't look a certain way or get to a certain place by sitting around and not having anything about them.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
That leads us really nicely into something that we like to ask everyone, which is around behaviors and habits.
Okay.
Is there a behavior that you are trying to encourage more of in your life at the moment, or a habit, and B, one that you're trying to stop in your life?
Yeah, so something I always try and kind of promote is to try and take yourself back to like your child instincts. Like when you were younger, you just live as you live and you don't really overthink anything. You eat until you're satisfied and then you stop, or if you think something's not right, you won't do it. And if you get like an urge, you will. And I think that's a really kind of important thing to try and regain, especially when you've been through something like trauma or everything that people have been through in life. I think it can kind of make you question yourself. So try and get people to kind of just act on what they feel, like rather than overthinking everything they do. So yeah, that's something I try and promote to people, which I think it's really hard to do because you can, I know everyone overthinks at times, but yeah, trying to kind of regain your child intuition, I guess.
Is there a process kind of tangibly and tactically that you try and do to encourage more of that, either for yourself or for clients?
Yeah, so I think it's important to be conscious of what you're thinking. I think it's easy to kind of go about your day-to-day life and not really listen to what you're thinking in your head or what you're feeling and kind of just brush everything under the carpet. But I think people need to stop and process what they are doing or why they're doing it or why they're thinking like that. Like if you're sat there and you're full but you're kind of in the midst of a binge, if you were a child you would just stop eating. So I think like trying to take yourself back to that place and really talk to yourself as if you are just living, like rather than over thinking everything in your head.
Does that look like journaling? Does that look like a phone
Yeah.
note?
Oh, I love journaling. Yeah, definitely.
Pro journaling.
Yeah. Journaling that I give to all my clients and have like a session before we start on how to do it properly, because I think it's easy to write down 3 things you're grateful for, but won't really change things in the grand scheme of things if you're not doing it properly. You got to dig deep. Yeah, journaling is great. I think everyone could benefit from it.
Yeah, I agree. And don't be put off by the word journaling. It doesn't have to be Dear Diary, Stephen looked at me funny today. It's instead about, actually just getting your thoughts out onto paper. A lot of clients I've experienced have been having problems with sleep lately due to just background anxiety and funky dreams and things coming up that they're not really sure why they're popping up. And one thing that I've used to great effect in the past and I've had clients use currently is pre-bed writing, not worrying about prose, not worrying about spelling or your handwriting, just literally scribbling down everything that flies into your head, almost the opposite of meditation, like trying to let all those thoughts come into your head and just get them all out. Because if you're
so important,
anxious, you've got so much flying around and someone says, "Oh, just meditate," you're like, fucking meditate. I can't sit by myself for like 30 seconds in a room. Like,
legit.
Last thing you'd want to do. So, but instead saying, right, get it all out, write it all down. And it kind of comes out of the ephemeral and onto the physical. And you're like, right, that's taken care of. It's out of there. I've thought it through to its completion. And for me, my head hits the pillow like a stone after doing that.
It's like a pre-planned worry time, isn't it? It's having that time before bed where you can let your brain go, like do what you want for a bit because it's fine. Whereas I think during the day, if we've all got other people to care about, which I know we all do, it's very easy to not care about ourselves in that time. So in that time before bed, I think a lot of coaches and a lot of our clients I know are coaches, they try and carry that to bed. They'll go to the gym and work all day and they're like, I just can't sleep when I get home. It's like, no wonder, you've got all of everyone else's problems, all of your own problems. Let them go. Phew, on paper, close it up. Good night. And then, if you want to meditate after that, I know I do. I like to meditate while I sleep sometimes if I'm quite stressed. I find listening to it and the breathing really helps. But other than that, that initial kind of dump of those issues or thoughts is fantastic.
Yeah, definitely. I don't think people realize that fitness coaching isn't really, you're usually a life coach a lot of the time, so it's very easy to take people's problems to bed with you. Definitely. Yeah,
but not clients to bed. Important underscore there. What about anything bad? Is there, not necessarily quote unquote bad, but is there a habit that you're trying to do less of and cut out from your life lately?
Yeah, I think pressure on myself to literally change the world or like be perfect. I think it comes with like having an addictive personality, or kind of having, if I have a goal, then I will do whatever it takes to kind of get to that place. And I need to realize that sometimes I just need to let things be and not kind of worry about doing the most all the time. And sometimes you just need to kind of be happy with what you've done already, not constantly be unsatisfied with what you've done because you've got something else to look forward to. I guess appreciate every kind of step of the journey, rather than feeling like I'm not enough or I've not done enough because I've got something else that I'm working on.
Yeah.
So I think that's quite an important thing.
I think that is such a difficult balance when you've had some level of success or achievement that you've already been striving for, and that comes at any level in anything.
Yeah.
It's again, once you've got that one thing, you're then thinking, oh well, it's just going to then be the next thing, and that continuously repeats. And you have to, I think, really learn the art of appreciating your own achievements before you can then move on to something else, rather than always thinking it's going to be in the next thing and you kind of chasing the hungry ghost, because it's going to be a pretty empty outcome, I think, long term.
Yeah, definitely. No, for sure. I think you spot on. You don't want to kind of slip out of your routine, but you also don't want to beat yourself up every day for things.
Yeah, it was very similar to the one that when Xander asked me this on the first talk, previous things, and coming around to the point of where you can be as compassionate with yourself as you would be with a loved one.
100%.
So much easier said than done. But keeping something like that in mind, that's what I've been using lately, and in a follow-up to that previous episode has been helping me massively. And that when I go to have those kind of words with myself, shall we say, thinking, would I say this to my little brother right now? Literally thinking that, and like you guys say, writing it down, journaling on it, saying it out loud. Within about 5 seconds, I snap out of it and I'm like, don't treat yourself like that. You don't
100%. I've said this before, there's that whole thing of treat your neighbour how you treat yourself, but sometimes you've got to treat yourself how you'd treat your neighbour.
Couldn't agree any more with that.
Is that the golden rule? But you flipped it around.
I would say so. I think it's just as important to be good to yourself as it is to other people, because otherwise you'll never feel fulfilled if you're never satisfied with who you are. I think a part of that as well is kind of accepting every part of what you've been through, whether that's an illness or mental health or whatever it is. Like it forms you as a person and makes you 10 times stronger. So if you can appreciate it, then it gives you a different outlook.
Sure. I think a nice way to tie that up that I kind of used to put that to myself and still think about from time to time is do the best you can with what you've got, and then when you know better, do better. Because 100%. There's no point in beating yourself up if you didn't know. Everyone's out here doing the best they can with what they've got, even though it may not seem like it from your vantage point. no one goes out into the world and says, I'm going to fuck up today. Everyone is trying to do the most they can with what they've got. And you have to recognise that in yourself as well.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, yeah, that's a very good point.
Talia, really thank you for giving us your best this afternoon.
Yes, thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome.
It's a pleasure.
We're going to be adding in a Q&A to the podcast in a few weeks' time. And to do that, we're going to need some questions from you guys. So do go over to our team Instagram page at JLX Coaching on Instagram, of course, and click the link in the bio, and it will take you to a quick Google form where you can fill in any of the questions you've got, and we will get to those in the podcast to come. As for coaching, you can also check the link in our Instagram bio for that, or go to the website, which is at the moment jacklenton.com, and you will see the links to coaching there. Until next week, have a great one.